Guess we'll go ahead and get started. It is right at 1 o'clock, so I'm so thankful for all of you who are here for coming. I'm so thankful for you. And I'm excited for you guys to get a chance to, learn a little bit more and dig into some of our tools strategies here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Catherine Earle. I'm the Positive Support Consultant Lead for the Eastern region, but I am here in the Central region, technically, physically speaking. So I'm in Jefferson City. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm happy you're here. So why don't you guys go ahead and put into the chat, what part of the state you're from, because we are serving everyone here across the state or country. I have heard we've had some variety in our participants here. And we will use our chat as we go through this course or, our time together. So, periodically I'll ask you guys for a little bit of input and, suggestions for things. So getting used to the chat function will be helpful. All right, let's pop this out here. Okay. All right, we've got some in the St. Louis area, some Sikeston, Central region. All right, so Springfield. Okay, so we're getting a variety. Kirksville, there we go, covering a little bit more up north there, northern area. Awesome. So I'm so thankful for you guys again for coming here and spending a little bit of your afternoon. We'll go ahead and get into, there we go. Okay, so like I said, we're going to use the chat box some just for some input and other helpful things, some paper or notes or something. There might be something here, hopefully something here, that you find useful and would like to take away from this. So some sort of way to remember what we talked about would be great. Okay, so this is just a brief overview of what we're covering today. Positive behavior supports. We're going to talk about some of the basic fundamentals about behavior and how to categorize that a little bit further, help our brain, process different kinds of behaviors, talk about coercion, punishments, and why you should probably try and avoid them. And how to improve interactions, improve behaviors, and build some of those relationships. Won't spend too much time here because we're going to learn about that later. Okay. So positive behavior supports to start with. So it's the science, it's behavioral analytic. We have some behavior analysis, and that's been, a science of behavior, studying behaviors. That's been around since, the 40s. So it is very, evidence-based, and we use behavior analysis in everything. Organizations use them in managing their companies or schools or therapies or all sorts of uses for behavior analysis. Within that, there's positive behavior supports. So it's like a public health model almost, even to structure our interventions and our way of treating people. And so we're going to increase the quality of life through the science of behavior. So today that we're going to focus mainly here on this green triangle, and that represents our universal strategies. So strategies that we can use to teach just, every single person can benefit from these kind of strategies. So in a healthy population, like 80 to 90% of people are only going to need these positive universal strategies. Then we start to go up a little bit to our yellow. And our yellow should only be, that 10 to 15% of people that have a little bit of an extra scoop. They're more of at risk for a poorer outcome. And then our red, our tippy top of our red triangle there is just our short-term, just intensive need. And just, again, like I said, short-term, only for short little bits of time that they'll need that intensive level of supports. But again, today, our universal strategies are what we are covering. And they can, again, positive behavior strategies, universal strategies, they work for every single person, from the way that you interact with, people that you work with, or children, or the cashier at the store you're at, your spouse. They work to improve your quality of life and their quality of life. Okay. So usually there's some people might have some reservations about positive behavior supports for a variety of reasons. It's hard to accept. It's hard to switch our mindsets because so much of our society is built on punishment or coercives or worsenings. So much of that is ingrained in our past experiences and the way that most of the world is functioning. We think that there must be a punishment for a more undesirable behavior, and this positive behavior strategies kind of counter that and make an argument against that. It's really just focusing on being kind and caring all the time, and that's hard. That's not an easy thing to do. Okay, so we're going to get started with some of this interaction. Can you guys give me, maybe put in the chat some of your definitions of behavior? So what do you think the definition of behavior is? All right, yeah, thank you. We're getting some here filling in this chat. Awesome, you guys. Actions that are positive and negative. The way something or someone acts or responds. Anything which can be seen and counted, actions, communications, tangibly acts. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to type these out into this slide. You guys can see those right here, but I think some of you might have attended some of our tools of choice things before, and I love seeing that. Absolutely. You guys are on the right track. I'll jump to our definition here. So behavior is anything that a person does that can be seen and counted. So it's not just one thing or another. If I can see it, if I can count it, it is absolutely anything that can be done. Anything you think of as a behavior that, every single thing that you do in a day is our definition of behavior. Can you see it? Can you count it? Okay, so let's go ahead and put in some of our examples on examples of behaviors that you guys commonly see. That you guys people that you work with, your family members, anyone that you interact with, commuters on the road. Throw in the chat box a couple of those examples of behaviors you commonly see. Shouting, eloping. Yeah, you guys are doing great. I'm going to try my best to keep up with this over here. And whining, laughing, taking care of others. Got some hitting, smiling. Okay, yeah, you guys have so many here. Trying to keep up, smiling, shouting, laughing, smiling, laughing, hitting, taking care of others. I got that. Refusal. Loving, crying, stealing. Okay. You guys, this participation, 10 out of 10 already. This is so helpful. Okay. So, like I said, thank you guys for all of these examples. This is perfect. Okay, so it's absolutely anything you can see and count. So let's see, I'm going to maybe highlight some here and see if we can notice a pattern. Wow, that's a big loop. Okay. More highlight, please. There we go. Of course, it wants to move it every time I click on it. Okay. We may do a quick pivot. Okay, it's going to work. It's going to work. Refusal or stealing or protest. Any sort of patterns yet you're noticing? Yeah. Awesome. You guys are getting it for sure. So those are all like some of our negative behaviors are more undesirable, maladaptive. Yeah. So for so often that we focus on, when we think of behavior, we think of those negative, those undesirables, those you know, like you guys are right on the track here. Those negative behaviors, those are the things that we typically focus on when we think of behaviors. So I mean, like you can see, our ratio here is not too bad. Oh, I guess we can. This crying could be a more negative. So our ratio isn't too bad, but typically, again, it's going to be weighted to this more negative. So we're going to keep that in mind when we say it's actually anything we can do that we can see and we can count. Okay. So also, I'm going to circle back here. So other ones that we've got some big old categories here. And those are some things that are a little bit harder to, wrap around here of refusal or protest or whining. Some of those things that we see that might have in common, those are a little bit more vague, a little bit more broad. And we'll kind of go into that. It's best to talk about it in specific actions rather than categories. So if we say, refusal or whining or, like this example here has saying, Catherine was rude. What does that even mean? If I see in somebody's shift notes or so I'm, talking to a coworker and they say that person was rude. Well, does that mean that, they were cutting in line or, cut you off in traffic? Did that mean that they were, using inappropriate table manners or, saying inappropriate language? So rude doesn't really help me whenever, those big categories or throwing a tantrum. What does that mean? For me, a tantrum could mean, that person threw themselves on the ground and they were hitting their fists on the ground for a duration of 5 minutes. But for you, a tantrum is just, crying and sitting there with their arms crossed. Two completely different things. And so by really talking about it in those very specific behaviors, it's really going to help us note any sort of behavior change that's happening. If it's increasing or, decreasing over time, we're going to know that if it's very specifically broken down into what we're seeing and what we're counting. Okay, so on that track too, we break down behavior into 4 universal categories. So all behavior can be put into one of these categories, and we've got our 2 halves here of desirable and undesirable. So our desirable behaviors are they can be significant or just okay. So those significant behaviors are things that we really just want to increase, like they would be great and amazing for that person, that individual that you're working with to do more of. We want to see more of. We want that to be, we want that to be the focus. Just okay. Those things that, are good and desirable, but often, forgotten about. The person just, day in, day out does it, and it's not, we don't need to have a big reinforcement about it, but it is definitely a positive thing that is happening. Our undesirable here is those things that are annoying or junk behavior. They're not harming anyone, but oof, they get under your skin. That's kind of the junk behavior. Or serious is harmful to themselves, to others, those kind of things. Okay, so when I think of our like behavior breakdown here into our categories, can think of a way to think about how different behaviors fall into this category and to provide that context, because context is everything for and when it comes to behavior. What's good and something we want to increase for another person is maybe just okay for another. So when I think of going to the gym, an example I've used before, you might have heard this, going to the gym. If I went to the gym, that is going to be a significant behavior. That is something we want to improve, and all the kudos in the world. Yes, I'm so glad that I got to the gym. A just okay behavior. Let's think about, any one of your professional athletes. Any one of them, if they go to the gym, like, yeah, of course, you're going to see them in the gym. They probably go a couple times a day, multiple times a week, all those things. Like, yep, they're doing it. They don't need a shout out or, a reward for going to the gym that day. A junk behavior, going to the gym and maybe not really doing what they're supposed to be doing at the gym. Some of those gym lookers, if you'll go down that route, that's annoying. It's junk behavior. And serious is if that person goes to the gym and they're not supposed to be. They are not in a condition. They just had a knee surgery. They are not cleared by their doctor to go to the gym. Doing so, it might ruin that knee replacement they just got. That is a serious behavior. It's harmful to themselves. That's kind of how you categorize, how it looks different for every single person. So just like I was talking there, I got ahead of myself. Classic. That whether it's undesirable or desirable, it really depends on the context in which it, on the behavior. So, another example that we usually use in the tools of choice world is our, spitting. If a person's learning how to brush their teeth and they spit that toothpaste out, that's so exciting. That's amazing. And you want to make sure that's, given that positive consequences for, but maybe it's junk behavior if it's somebody's spitting on the sidewalk. That ooh, that's yucky to me. It's junk behavior. It's not harming themselves or others. So that context really kind of, it could be the desirable, undesirable. Context is king here, because what makes a difference for one person isn't always true for the next. Okay, so like I said, these significant desirable behaviors, that first one on our chart there is, and those are the ones we want to increase. Those are going to be what make a difference for that person, that their quality of life is going to increase after, those significant desirable behaviors. They're just, going to help them and their own environment. We really want to I've said this a few times already, we want to increase those. We want to see all of that happen more and more. So our just okay behaviors, often overlooked. We take them for granted, but we tend to notice them if they stop happening. So, I think about that for, going to work. That's just okay behavior. It's definitely on the desirable behavior side, but if I stop going to work, my boss is probably going to notice. So, or, manners, or turning off the light when you leave a room, taken for granted all the time. But if you stop doing it, somebody's going to notice. Or you closing the door when you leave the front of the house, just okay behavior. It's expected, common, good to do. But if you stop doing that, that might start a problem. Okay. So then our junk behaviors, these are really usually what we focus a lot of our time on here. In, just the world of, behavior, or just your interactions. You usually focus on those things that annoy you, that are frustrating. They tend to, upset us the most. It could be picking nose. Sometimes it's that pen clicking that gets under people's skins. Anything like that is going to be our junk behavior. So it's not harmful. Like I said earlier, it's not harmful to themselves. It's not illegal. Um, okay, but usually it's the stuff that we pay attention to the most, and you're, responding to the most. When I say pay attention to, I really mean responding to and giving a consequence, be it your attention or otherwise, for that. Other junk behaviors, what are some examples of junk behaviors that you guys, have? What's something that's junk in your world? You guys can go ahead and put that into the chat if you would like. Yeah, some cursing, absolutely. So that really can get under people's nerves, and especially context depending too. Oh yeah, leaving jelly in the peanut butter jar and vice versa. Yes, then you're the next person, you open it up and you see it. Ooh, and you know who did it. Sometimes if it's in your own house, you're like, my spouse or my child, I know they did that. I'm leaving laundry unfolded. Yeah, dishes in the sink sometimes is another one that, that one gets on my nerves. All those kind of junk behaviors. It's not inherently a problem. It's not harmful. Repeatedly saying the same word. Yeah, that over and over. That perseveration sometimes really gets under people's skin. Okay, great. You guys, you guys know your pet peeves. You're in touch with that. I'm glad that you're guys aware of what's considered, junk for you guys. Perfect. Here are some more of our other ones. Slamming doors or screaming, saying, mean things. All sorts of these are junk behavior. Okay, so why do people even do these kinds of junk behaviors? Why, you can put in the chat if you'd like, or I might, just kind of go for it. So cursing at other people, that cursing, it could be they don't know any better. They don't know that it's inappropriate. Attention seeking, it's a habit. Yeah, that's just the way that they were brought up. They might, thank you for all these examples. Again, they might know it's annoying. They might do it to get under that person's skin. Sometimes people do that because I know it's going to get a reaction. I know that person is going to give me some attention. Or the other way around, they may not know it's annoying, and that's just who they are, what they've learned in life. Their past experiences have taught them that's a thing that works for them. They may be avoiding. Yeah, absolutely. So those are some of the reasons that we have that people do those junk behaviors, and typically it gets paid off. If they're, in pain and, they're cursing because they're in pain, and, somebody else is going to hear it and respond to them and provide them help. Or if they're doing it to get attention, someone responds to them, they get attention, all sorts of those kind of things. We have something that we're going to talk about well towards the end here about junk behavior. We have a tool for that, something that we can use for ourselves to work on. It's called our pivot tool, and we will get there. Yeah, we will get there. Okay, so it's not junk behavior. We do want to, specify and draw the line. If it is harming themselves, others, illegal, that, it's not junk behavior. It's not something that needs to be, that we need to use our pivot tool down the road for. That's something that is specific, and we need to ensure the safety of them and those around them. A lot of times in our environments, we'll have like a safety crisis plan or a specific plan put in place to work on those serious behaviors. And also in those cases, we've got the safety crisis plan. Again, I'm slightly ahead of myself. I think I know what slide is coming up next. So if there's a safety crisis plan, and that might be an option for you if you're repeatedly seeing some of those serious and harmful behaviors, we can scan here for a little bit more of that. And Also, I hope you guys at this point know about our 988, which is the alternative for 911 for mental health crises. You can call to have behavioral specific help on what's going on as opposed to a 911 response. We should have this up at the end as well if these are helpful resources for you. Okay. So again, we've got our categories here, and we kind of talked about some of these, how they can be significant, how they can be just okay, how they can be junk behavior. Okay, so hopefully you guys have more and more examples of what could be considered in our significant or our just okay. Thinking about the people that you're interacting with, whether it's family or students or individuals that you work with or your spouse. Working on increasing those significant and really working on building up those positive behaviors for just our increasing quality of life. That's our main goal here in this. Okay, so here we've got some of our fundamental facts that help us understand some of the behaviors that we see that we interact with regularly. So these next slides are kind of our principles that we build a lot off of here. So behavior is always right or correct given the person's environment, given their history, so their current situation, their history, their experiences, their learning, the things happening around them or things that have happened in the past. That's all what's everything culminating together is what's creating that person's behavior. So number 2 are consequences. Consequences are anything that occurs after a behavior, or consequences can strengthen or weaken our behavior. So if we have a positive consequences, if we after a consequence, we see that behavior increasing and happening more and more frequently, or weakening our behavior and seeing less and less of it. So we can strategize on how to, our positive behavior or a positive consequence after a behavior to increase our likelihood of seeing that again. But again, a consequence is anything that happens like immediately after a behavior, not just, a planned response down the road. Okay. It takes time for changes in the environment to change their behavior. So changing behavior and seeing more and more of those positive behaviors and after giving those positive consequences, it's going to take time. The second you give a positive consequence, it doesn't mean that it's going to flip like a light switch and that person is going to, oh, okay, I'm ready to show positive, those positive behaviors more. That's not how things work, unfortunately. It takes time, consistency, data, taking notes on it, making sure that you're actually seeing an increase or a decrease based on what's actually happening and not just anecdotal, like, oh, I feel like they've done that more and more frequently. We can take data on it. But their environment, that taking time for their environment to change. So it's that learning history piece of their environment that takes time. Okay, so the past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior, all things being equal. So things that we've seen happen in the past are likely going to happen again. And we can use that to anticipate what's going to happen for that in the world of that individual, and use that to navigate our responses, our consequences, and our strategies. And we can work on that. We know the best predictor of the past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. Last time there was a thunderstorm, they were scared. Next time there's a thunderstorm, you see that thunderstorm rolling in, you can probably anticipate them being scared again. That's the past behavior. You've seen it once, you'll likely see it again. and we can work on that. Then we can choose our strategies and address that as we see it coming, as opposed to waiting and reacting in the moment. Okay. Giving our negative, coercive, or punishing consequences, we call worsening sometimes, typically result in many problems, including seeing more of those undesirable behaviors. So giving some of those negative responses and consequences typically is going to increase that. We're paying more attention to the negative, and avoid using those punishments, those worsenings for a person. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as well here in a minute, so I don't need to dive too deep in the slide. Okay, in the long run, behavior responds better to positive consequences. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about this as we go on, but these are our fundamental foundational facts here. So, frequently, if you've worked for a more negative or punishing kind of environment, your boss, hopefully not your current one, but if you've been in a negative work environment before, you're going to anticipate it to be, negative, and your performance is probably not going to be increasing. You're probably not, star performer, excited to be at work. But if you've switched and then started working for a positive boss or, a positive environment, it's a lot easier to be a productive, positive, integral member of that team. So hopefully you can kind of see some of that, where that really focusing on that positivity is really going to help bring up that level of your positivity. And unfortunately, our negative consequences usually swing that the other way. Okay. So our positive approach is going to set the foundation for all the interventions, all the strategies we do to address behaviors, is our universal, our positive strategies here. And it's just about increasing quality of life for people, making the world, making their world, our world, a better place. So like I've mentioned a few times before, to change behaviors, we need to find ways to teach and to pay more attention to those desirable behaviors. What can we focus on that's positive? Okay, so what are the target behaviors? What are behaviors we're wanting to teach, increase, replace? What desirable alternative things can we focus our attention on and strengthen them? Okay, so, typically we do focus on the negative when we think of, oh, we've got to make them stop doing this. We've got to make them stop, the negative. But are they doing something positive? What positives can we teach them? If they need to be taught the positives, or what positives can we focus on to see that side flourish? So we're going to motivate that. We're going to put our attention on the desirable, minimize our attention on the undesirable, and teach it. Sometimes it has to be taught. Okay, so we'll go on here. Hopefully those are it helps you understand some of those things. Okay, like I said, I said it a few times. We really want to hammer home, not focusing on those undesirable behaviors. Focus on what you want them to do. Those kind of like we talked about in the very beginning slides of behavior. What are the things we've been focusing on? Those negatives are typically what we think of behaviors. We need to address them. We can focus instead on those positive and address those. So changes take time. We're looking for progress, just progress, not perfection. People don't learn in a day. It takes that time. We have to have patience, positivity, and it takes you working on changing your focus as well. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of our coercions, some of our ways that we may be focusing on that undesirable, those negatives, and reacting in our negative ways. So coercion, it's so interesting, so powerful. We always say to avoid coercion. It's hard. Our goal, usually we say avoid it. It's almost impossible. But if we can go, a little bit of a time without using that coercion, we just want to recognize that it's happening in the world around us. It happens everywhere, all the time. So if we can do our part and avoid some of it. We'll hopefully be working on that, quality of life for everyone. We're going to talk some more about the effect of some of those coercive acts, the ways people respond to coercion. They're certainly not building up our relationship. I'll give you a hint there. Okay, so coercion, the way we punish as our response to a behavior. So we'll go over, we've got 10 common coercion. So often, just our world is built to be coercive. There's just, negatives, behaviors happen and we slap some negative responses onto it just all the time. Usually it's habit. It's the way society functions. We see it all the time. It's the way you were probably raised. Those parenting strategies sometimes happen like that. It's often just out of instinct is the way we respond is our coercion. So it takes, like we've said before, it takes time to change and recognize. So it's a negative. It does not help build your relationship when you respond coercively. We're not modeling the behaviors that we want to see when we have our coercive responses. It just there's the benefits are not there for coercion. Okay, so we also say we're fostering discipline. So we think about discipline often as, punishments, but it's really that anything is a discipline. A discipline is, teaching math, the things that we want to see, teaching math, teaching science. That's a discipline. We teach it, we follow up, we increase that person's skills and those disciplines. What are we teaching? What are we modeling? What are we motivating a person to do? Okay, so our coercion is responses that we have that usually it's our way, it's a response that we have, and it's our way of teaching people that I don't like what you're doing, I want you to stop. But we don't probably address it nicely. Okay, so here are 10 examples of common coercions. This is certainly not an exhaustive list. There are lots of ways people can be coercive in their responses. And our main takeaway here, or this was taken from a really useful and helpful book, The Power of Positive Parenting by Dr. Glenn Latham. And so here are 10. We'll go into each one and give some examples. Okay, so questioning. The first way you responded to a person, asking a question you really don't want the answer to. I always think about, a parent when a kid comes home late for curfew, or, if they come home late from curfew and the parent goes, "Do you know what time it is? What in the world were you thinking?" You don't really want the answer to it. You just want them to, to feel bad, to recognize error. Or if you come in the room and you saw a person, ate the whole big old section of chocolate cake that's sitting there, and you say, "Did you really eat all of that cake?" And you don't really need to know that answer. You probably already know the answer. It's just putting that person down and giving them a worsening, as we say here in this example, giving them a worsening, and they don't feel great after that question. Their response is not going to help. That your question there isn't helping build up your relationship in any way. Are you crazy? What were you thinking? And a lot of it here we'll talk about later is about tone of voice. If you say, "What were you thinking?" Or, "Do you know what time it is?" Versus if I ask a coworker, I'm sitting here and I say, "Oh, do you know what time it is?" So it's a lot of times the use of that voice in your tone of voice as well. Or your body language when you question, you kind of lean in, you maybe point that finger, any sort of that, your eyebrows, all sorts of things are involved and wrapped up in this kind of questioning as a coercion. Okay, arguing. We always say it takes two to argue. It takes you responding argumentatively. Two people, in your point of arguing, when you respond in an argumentative, when you do that, your purpose is you want to win. You're trying to put that person down, let them know they were wrong, and you were right. It's a put down. It's putting them back down, if you say in quotes, in their place. putting them, letting them know that you were right. Often, the argumentative tone of voice, that's a big piece of that. So you'll see frequently these examples here are, bullet points on backing or, showing how this is a worsening or a disrespectful. Again, it's probably more of a gut reaction versus a planned response to argue. Even when you do, quote, win that argument, no one really feels better after. So arguing is a coercive. Our sarcasm and teasing, man, this is a big one as well. It's hard. So sarcasm, we tend to use this a lot. I mean, every sitcom, I would say most people do it in most of their interactions, but it really is just a worsening, and it's usually at the expense of somebody, which is why sarcasm is such a bummer and one we're trying to avoid. Because if you catch someone in the wrong frame of mind, if they're not in the right place and they don't catch your joke, your sarcasm, they could interpret that literally and be like, oh, wow, why were they just so mean to me? And they weren't in on that inside joke. So usually it's, at the expense of somebody or putting someone down. Or, two staff are going to be, you and a staff member are joking, or they come in and they're not feeling great and they're clearly, not going to help do as best as they can. And you're like, oh man, it's going to be a great night tonight, or, great shift with you today. That's the example of, it's kind of a worsening. It's, they may laugh, but it still is at the expense of them. It doesn't feel great. So really think about that when you use those sarcasms. If you caught that person in the wrong way, or they missed your joke, it's really going to be bad. And it's going to take a lot to repair that relationship then. Okay, force is our next one. So verbal, physical force, physical aggression. It's certainly creating worsening. We know, the physical aggression, we see what physical force is. Certainly that's not building your relationship. Certainly that's causing a harm between you and that other person, or that verbal force, that, big language, that loud, that putting them down, making them feel worse. I know I keep saying it, but when we think about our use of verbal force, or, making a person do something else that they really weren't planning on doing with our words. So whether that's, or with our actions as the physical force. So just making them do something that they weren't going to be doing or intending on doing. Threatening is our next one. So again, that can be verbal, that can be physical. Your body position is a way to, physically threaten, getting up too close in their face, something like that is a threat. Or that verbal threats of, oh man, if you keep doing that, we're going to leave, we're never going to come back. And again, that's probably such a reaction. I think about, parents that you see in the grocery store. Oh man, if you keep crying and begging for that candy bar, we're going to leave right now. We're never coming back. You don't mean that. You're in the grocery store. You need your groceries, and you can't avoid taking them back, never taking them back to the grocery store again. It's just a gut reaction. You're trying to get them to stop. I don't like what you're doing, and I want you to stop, is what that message is conveying. But again, done is probably a gut reaction. You've probably seen it, heard it, other people have done it. Threatening also could look like, if you don't eat your dinner, you're not going to get dessert. Meant to make them, shaming them, giving them a worsening. All sorts of things like that is our threat. And that's, hopefully you're saying that that's coercive or worsening. Our criticism. You don't like what somebody's doing, how they're doing it. You're going to make sure that you know it. I think of if somebody's, your spouse or an individual or a student is sweeping the floor, and you don't see, and you see that they're not doing it, maybe the best, or maybe you do it differently. You're going to point that out to them. You're going to, oh, you're not doing it right. It's not good. It's not good. You're not doing a good job with this. And here, do you see that? Do you see that? That's how you're doing it wrong. You're sweeping the floor wrong. You're missing all this dirt. that's not going to help. That's certainly creating a worsening for them. They're not going to, want to sweep the floor again next time. They're going to think about your coercive statements. And it's showing them that you don't really respect them in the way that they're doing things. Maybe it should be something that you could address in the future. You say, okay, before they sweep the floor next time, I'm gonna help them work through these strategies. Maybe they do need that to be taught, but not in that moment. Okay, despair. Oh, this one. So this is just, it's never going to work. We're never going to get through this. We're never going to get accomplished. Oh, this heavy sighs, the shaking your head, hands on your head, despair, like, oh, we're never going to get through this worksheet. We're never going to, never going to, accomplish this, never going to get to our destination. It's just never going to work out for us. You're giving up on them, and that doesn't feel good for them. Maybe they're trying their hardest. So that's our way that despair is creating that worsening. Lecturing and logic, just repeating and going on and on and on. It feels like I'm lecturing and logicking you guys right now because I'm just talking and not having you guys interact with all of this. Lecture, logic. So you talk and talk and talk, and you think about the Charlie Brown teacher voice, like, meh, meh, meh. Like, people are going to tune it out sooner, like pretty soon, if they realize you're just saying the same thing over and over and over and explaining why this is the best way or why your way is the right way. And it's good because this, and this, and it's better because of this. And like, all right, calm down. Like, that's a worsening. It is not showing that you have respect for that other person. It is a coercive. Taking away, our next one. So taking away objects or access to things. So a lot of our coercion, so it's kind of overlap there. So if we say, taking away their desserts, or, you hit your sister, you're not going to get iPad time this week. That doesn't apply. They don't understand that. It's just a reaction. Taking it away. It's, showing them, it's putting them down, putting them into, I'm above you. I'm going to take this thing away from you, whether it's a thing or an access to things, like going out into the community, or, access to the car or their cell phone or things like that. Okay, talking bad about a person's behavior with the person right there. You think about a lot of times the age old, when your father gets home from work, they're going to hear about that. And then dad gets home and you would not believe what Johnny did today. Johnny, yada, yada, yada. And Johnny's sitting right there. It's not helping build your relationship with them in any sort of way. It's pretty disrespectful if you think about it, if you take time and slow that down. And if you do, if it is critical information, maybe it is helpful information for that other person. If it's a change of shift, if you're in the direct care field or something like that, there's a time when you should set up a way to exchange that information without that person around. Okay, so our effects of coercion. So something coercive has happened. That person who has experienced the coercion, been the recipient of it, is likely going to find a way to do one of these things, to avoid, to get even, escape. Those are our top three. We also learn coercive behavior, behave less confidently, and simply get attention for that undesirable behavior that you're, giving a coercive response to. So that, avoid, I see that person coming down the hallway. I know that they are going to, have a lecture on logic. They're going to give me something negative about what I did, or the last time I ran into them, they physically pushed me. So I'm going to see them. I'm going to avoid. I'm going to, take a hard right and go to the bathroom. I'm going to do anything I can to not be in that meeting, something like that. Or, calling in sick even. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to start avoiding that person who's coercive to me, or just get even. They made me not feel good. I'm going to do anything I can to make them not feel good. which is also that learning coercive behavior. They're going to learn those ways that you're doing, and they're going to do it right back, or they're going to escape. They have a coercive environment, they're getting lecture logic. They're going to find a way to be like, gotta go. I'm going to, get up, leave this environment. This is not good. I don't feel good. This is not a friendly environment for me. That's escape. I talked a little bit, learning that coercive behavior. They're seeing that modeled. They're seeing that as examples of behavior that they can do. Or they're going to behave less confidently if they have, coercion in their environment. If every time you have an interaction with your boss and they lecture logic and tell you what you need to be doing instead, I'm just going to wait for them. Next time I have an interaction, I'm basically going to wait for them to correct me and lecture and logic and tell me what I did wrong. I know someone frequently gives the example of Jerry Seinfeld, the Seinfeld show. You may have seen that episode of The Soup Nazi, where the person, if you don't do it correctly, he's going to yell at you. You're not going to get soup, and he's going to yell at you. So Jerry Seinfeld, arguably a very confident individual, he goes up there and you see him, walk up to the soup line, and he is cowering. He's nervous. He's shaky. He's behaving less confidently because of those effects of coercion. They're coming to expect that coercion from that person, and they're going to not have confidence. They're going to wait for your coercive worsening. And like I said, they're going to receive attention for that undesirable behavior. So if you respond to undesirable behavior with coercion, they're getting an attention for it. And we're paying off and giving that attention to the undesirable and giving those consequences, which are likely going to increase seeing that behavior in the future. Okay, so we're typically coercive. If you think about the times when you use coercion the most, so if you think about, the times that you lecture logic or use that despair, I think despair is a really good one to see. Like when you're hungry or tired, it's been a long night and they're not getting this task done. Oh, you're exhausted. You're going to use that despair. You've had a bad day, elsewhere before your interaction with that person. You're frustrated. You're hungry. When I'm hungry and tired, I'm going to be coercive. You've just experienced coercion by somebody else. You've just seen it happen. You're going to use that coercion or effective coercion. It's a pet peeve, some of that junk behavior. Sometimes we use our coercions a lot for that junk behavior that we talked about earlier. And we're going to use our, we're used to using those because of our own past experiences. That was the way your boss did it, your teacher did it, your friend, your parents, that was the way that they responded in the moment, gut reaction. Oh, we're never going to get through this. You're probably going to do that. It was modeled for you. You're going to see it again. Okay, so it works. Unfortunately, the problem is the coercion usually works in the short term, but it's going to just build up and build up and build up those long-term problems. That person isn't going to learn to do the correct task. They're going to learn to navigate their environment to not have your coercive responses anymore. That person is going to come home from curfew so they don't have to hear you, questioning them or lecture logic or using that verbal force, that yelling at them. I'm going to get home by curfew so I can not deal with that situation. I'm not doing it because that's the right thing to do or because I've learned the skill to, sweep the floor correctly, doing it to avoid that coercion. And it's going to just bubble up and bubble up. It's going to be a problem that I don't have the correct skill and I'm not doing it for the correct reasons, which is really, we use coercion because it works short term, which is such a bummer. We have to create a plan to help work, like I said earlier, work on teaching those positives and building those up. Okay. Again, so here kind of gave a little insight into what I was getting to next. So if we're not using coercion, if we're avoiding that, goodness, thank you, praise. If we're able to avoid that coercion and stop that, we're not using those worsening consequences. What are we going to do instead? We're going to make a plan. We're going to anticipate. We're going to think about what we can do instead. So if we're using that coercion in response to junk, and we're going to expect to see that junk again, what can we do instead? Um, we're going to think about what was a situation that, what was the environment that triggered those undesirable behaviors? What are they getting? What are the consequences do they currently get for those undesirables? Um, what should we work on teaching that person? That number 4 and 5 is the big one. What do we need to do instead of those negative or undesirable behaviors? What do they do instead? What can we change about that environment, our responses, or anything like that to get them to do those desirables? Okay. What are we going to do? Our tool, we work on building relationships, and that's one of our really strong tools that we have here, and we teach. Build that relationship with a person as opposed to tearing it down. So here's our steps. We call it a stay close. You may hear that in our tools of choice classes. We're going to build our relationship up by doing a stay close. Here are our steps here on 1 through 11 on how we work on building those relationships up. We're going to move towards that person, remain within arm's reach. So we're going to really let them know that this is a personal interaction, that I mean interact with you, and I'm going to take the time and come close to you. Touch as appropriate to the situation, high five, a hand on the shoulder, anything like that. Our caring facial expression, like I mentioned earlier, our facial expression, tone of voice carries so much weight, so much power in our interactions. And it makes a difference for your interactions. Even, in a webinar like this, if I were to just, all right, so our steps of building a relationship would be clearly that's not going to help build up. We're going to really work on that kind and caring and making sure that you're coming off as genuine and interested. Same goes for that body language. Relaxed, open-ended, not tensed off, closed off, threatening, and happening pretty quickly. Getting into that and showing that person that you are here, you're ready to listen. And then our steps 6, 7, and 8 there, those are our big to-do tasks here. We call it OEE. You may hear that if you're in our longer tools of choice, which we recommend, are open-ended questions. So we want to get to working on building those relationships. You move close, you're ready to have your body language, your expressions. You ask your open-ended questions. Getting that, but really in the goal of that is getting that other person talking, getting that conversation rolling. It may take a couple times, a couple open-ended questions. Like I say, if I'm, in a not great mood, any question you asked me, I could shut down with a one-worded answer and not be open-ended. So it may take a couple open-ended questions of, how was your day as an example? Someone could easily shut that down fine. So, maybe you try again. What did you do today? Or, what kind of, anything that's getting the conversation going. What are you watching on TV? Or you guys get the point of open-ended questions. It gets that other person talking, opening up about something in their world, and whether it's their day, their interests, hobbies that they like. Use empathy statements. Show something to say that you recognize the emotion that they're having. You don't have to see it. You don't have to feel the same thing, but you recognize that situation gives them an emotion. A typical one would be, excited or frustrated, those kind of words, but we could do, you look thrilled, you look elated, you look disappointed, you look pissed off. And we'll kind of get to those more negative emotion ones later. And so this is a positive, in our positives of excited, curious, relaxed, over the moon, any sort of empathy statements. And empathy statements build up a lot. We really like them. It shows them that the other person that you see them, you see what's going on in their world. You recognize that there's something happening to them. You seem, you look, you must feel, you are, something like that is a good way to start. You seem excited. You seem nervous, exhausted. And not only does it let them know that you see them, but it's also kind of like a proactive strategy in teaching some of those variety of words. We don't want to stick with sad, happy, and leave it there. But building up that person's, emotional literacy, that social emotional language, and social emotional skills for that person is a really good strategy and a really good thing to, build up on in this. Hopefully you guys have heard of social emotional learning. So the next, we've asked them an open-ended question. We've shown them that we recognize an emotion is happening, that they must be thrilled. And then we use our encouragement statement. Let them know that something that they have done or are currently doing is going to pay off for them in the future or is benefiting them and improving their situation. So we'll go through some examples later as we get on in a few slides. Okay. And then we're going to listen while the person's speaking. Really, that's a hard skill. When we pay attention, we have to recognize in ourselves, I'm going to ask them a question and then I'm going to sit back. I'm going to wait for them to get their thoughts and emotions and get all of that out there. And that goes for interrupting or changing the topic. So keeping talking about the thing that they brought up, not reacting to any sort of junk behavior. They may be, over the moon and excited, but they're still doing something that is junk behavior to you. We're working on not reacting to that and avoiding our coercive reactions, like we just talked about, avoiding reacting with lecture logic or questioning or anything like that. Recognize that your goal right now is building up your relationship. Okay. So empathy, like I talked about, is being able to take that perspective and communicating it to another person. You don't even have to agree that, that emotion is, or you don't even have to have experienced that emotion. If, finding a penny on the ground is just the best thing in the world for that person, it's a rare penny. They never find pennies. It's heads up, anything like that. That could be exciting for them. You don't care. You've got a whole collection of pennies. You've got a whole change bag in your car. You just don't think twice about, but it's exciting for that person. Recognizing that for that person. So it's not about you and it's not about the emotions that you see or could feel given the circumstance. It's the emotion that they're having given that circumstance. And it's showing them that their feelings matter to you when you recognize that. So then our encouragement statement is recognizing how that person's behavior has improved their situation and letting them know that they can do that again and continue to build up, and it's going to have more positives for them. Maybe it's about they've studied hard and got a good grade. That can, you can use that encouragement in any variety of reasons, whether it's being able to, play in the baseball game because they got their grades up. You studied hard, you worked hard, you got a good grade. You can, you qualified, you can play in the baseball game, or you can graduate, or you can, take the car out on Friday night if that's the expectation that was sent, is getting that A or B or C, anything that you're working on making an improvement towards. Or, they finished doing their chores early. Whether that's an individual, a child, your spouse, they get more time for TV. You finished up early, you've worked hard, you put in that time. It's amazing. You're going to have more time to relax and decompress. Any sort of positive. You may need to ask those open-ended questions a little bit more. If you don't have the, a solid foundation or a solid relationship, maybe that person's more of a stranger. You may need to ask more open-ended questions and kind of layer those in. It's not a once and done sort of situation for empathy or encouragement or open-ended questions. Layer them in, build that interaction, ask more questions, keep that relationship building and growing stronger and stronger. And sometimes it may take asking more of those open-ended questions for you to be able to give that encouragement statement, so that they're working on making it to that baseball game, or graduating is something that they've worked hard for and really have been pushing themselves for. Okay, so we've got a couple practice scenarios. Back to some participation in our chat box here for you guys. So let's do our awesome Alex here, and kind of gave you some examples a minute ago. Alex, he just got his GED results back. He passed. He studied for this. You're walking down the hall, Alex, this person to you, shows you the score. They passed. They got their GED. What's an open-ended question you can ask for them? Or what kind of empathy? Let's start with empathy instead. What kind of empathy could you give this person? What emotion are they having that you could recognize? You've seen, you look, you must be fill in the blank. Throw it in our chat box. You must be so excited. Yes, you must be excited. That's great. You must be so proud of yourself. Yes, you must be pumped. You look elated, proud. Yeah, you guys are definitely recognizing the emotions that this person probably has. Relieved. Yeah, that's another good one. Like, this thing is behind you. You did it. You don't have to do it again. Excited, proud, elated. Yes, building up some of those emotional literacy, emotional words for that person. What about encouragement? Again, I kind of gave an example earlier. Maybe I should edit my example for my next the tools for everyone session here. But what kind of encouragement? What has that person done, and how can it pay off for them in the future? They accomplished another great one. So let's throw our encouragement statements in our chat if we could. You worked so hard and it paid off. That's perfect. If we don't know a super lot about that person, or even if we do, let's keep it simple. That's exactly an encouragement statement. Perfect. Or if you know more about that person, like I said earlier, I like that you're on a path to success. You studied so hard, you did it, you passed, you worked hard, you passed. Now you can play in the baseball game. You got your grades up. Now you could go to the school dance. Now you could go to, get that job you've been wanting that you have to have a GED for. Now you can get that job. Anything to recognize give that person that their actions are paying off for them now and in the future. Okay, thank you guys again for your participation. I know it was it's been a bit. I was, on the lecture train for a little bit. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are still with me. Okay, so our practice again, our scenario number 2. Okay, so co-worker Carl. You walk into the break room with your lunch. Carl smiles, says hi, moves papers out of the way, and gives you a room to sit down. What open-ended question? Here's a perfect one. So what open-ended question could we give Carl here? And a reminder, it doesn't necessarily have to stick to, these more neutral everyday scenarios. What kind of open-ended question can we give to Carl? It doesn't have to be, what papers did you move? That's a little too. But how can you get that conversation moving with Carl? Yeah, how are you doing today? What's going on? How are you doing? How's your day? All of those are perfect ways. Open-ended questions. Again, the purpose is get the conversation going. It's a perfect way to get that conversation going. Is anyone sitting here? Yeah, that's a good, it starts that going. You guys are great. You guys totally get the concept. You're getting that conversation going with Carl. Some empathy. So again, using that open-ended question, drawing from their answer there for that open-ended question. Sometimes it takes a little work on what kind of empathy you can give to them on, even empathy of if they're a teacher, they're grading papers. Man, it looks like you're working hard. Or it's just they gave you more in that open-ended question. So how'd your presentation go the other day? Perfect opportunity for you to give empathy. Maybe it went really, really well. And that's their response. So our example from Mark here is, how did your presentation go the other day? Great open-ended question. That gets them started on if it went great. All right, Our empathy then, if that presentation went great, we can give them empathy of, man, you look so excited. Again, kind of the same, you look relieved. Any sort of thing like that is our empathy. And maybe our encouragement coming up next, you know them, you know Carl worked really hard on that presentation, or you know, you worked hard and you know that class is gonna, you know, really be motivated to, you know, do X, Y, and Z. Those are some good examples of encouragement. What are other kinds of encouragement? If you're thinking about a scenario where you asked an open-ended question, maybe it's how's your day? What's going on? Use a little bit of your, you know, creative skills and think about an empathy or an encouragement that you could give to this person. And feel free to put these examples in the chat if you would like. Again, it really sometimes takes practice, because you think of this as, you know, an ordinary situation. It's a little bit easier for that our awesome Alex there who passed his GED. Like, yeah, that's an amazing thing, and I can go off of that. He passed his GED. He's excited. I can run with that. But, you know, more mundane every day, like, oh, you know, got more papers, you know, it takes a little bit more. So this is just what working on our practice of keeping that conversation moving and building that relationship with this person. Okay, so what else could you do when given some of those behaviors? Maybe it's a junk behavior, something that we can do. We pivot for our junk behaviors. This is one of our tools that we teach, is pivoting. So it's junk. We want to avoid, like our stay close skills, we want to avoid reacting to junk. Those things that get under our skin, holy cow, it's annoying, are pivoting here. So our junk behavior pays off for the person. We talked about that a little bit earlier. The junk behaviors are the ones, they're undesirable, they're annoying, they're frustrating to you, but they're not actually harmful. Why do they do them? How does it, you know, we say, how does it pay off for them? They get what they want. They make it, maybe it makes you go away. Maybe it gets you to do the thing and they don't have to do the task anymore. They want attention. They want a reaction of any sort. Or they're just delaying. They, you know, if I give them this junk behavior, they'll push it off for a half hour, a day, a week, any sort of thing like that. They get out of it. So those are why those junk behaviors get paid off. Okay, so then thinking about junk behavior, usually if we're reacting to the junk behavior, that's when our serious behavior might start escalating. So it might start increasing and increasing, and when we're paying attention and paying it off. So that's when it could start getting up into that serious. So okay, so here's our skills on how we pivot. Okay, so we're not going to react to that junk behavior, more specifically with our tone of voice, our facial expressions, our body language, or specifically mentioning it. I mean, I know we talked a lot before about those facial expressions, tone of voice, how much weight those really, really carry in your interactions, and specifically mentioning it. So we're going to use our pivot options. We've got 3 choices, 3 paths we can go down. We're like, ooh, I see that behavior. It is annoying to me. What can I do instead? I really want to give a reaction. I can suddenly we could pivot to another person, actively attend to another person just right there. Another coworker sitting at the table, something like that. We can subtly pivot to an activity. Attend to something else that's going on. It's an email that I'm writing, notes that I'm taking. You know, I'm folding laundry, I'm wiping off a dry erase board or sweeping the floor, anything like that. I can just pivot to another activity or on that person. That one takes skill. They all take skill. Pivot is hard. To not react to that junk behavior, to something that's really just grinding your gears. but we could pivot on the person, continue what you're doing, don't react to the junk, and actively attend to the person's just okay behavior. So actively attend to something that they're doing that's good. That's their, that may not usually and frequently get that attention. We're going to actively attend to it. Okay, so that's a pivot on a person. So using those first two, so not the third, if we're pivoting on another person or on an activity, after that junk behavior stopped for ideally 10 consecutive seconds, we're going to provide some sort of reinforcement for the desirable or just okay behavior of the person who displayed that junk behavior. We're going to provide them any sort of positive for something. They might not have completely stopped whatever is just grinding your gears, frustrating you, irritating you, driving you up the wall. But there's something that you can give them positive about. Ideally, if it stopped completely, yeah, we definitely want to give them those positive consequences. But again, those positive consequences are not about, don't say anything about the junk behavior. So not saying anything about the junk behavior, but something positive that they can do or that they are doing. Maybe your junk behavior is if they are, pacing around the room or pacing back and forth as they're telling you something about your day, and you're just like, I feel dizzy. Can you just please hold on and stay still for a minute? You don't want to say that. That's a worsening. That's paying off that junk behavior. It's drawing attention to it, all of that. So maybe they just pause for a second. That's when you want to provide those positive consequences. And you're not going to say, oh, yeah, I'm so glad you finally stopped walking around the room. You're going to say, oh, thank you so much for telling me about your day. Anything that's positive that's going on without mentioning that junk behavior. And sometimes they might start back up again and start pacing. So you're going to repeat and repeat and repeat so that you don't lose your cool. Again, it's so you just stay calm, stay composed. You're not paying that off for them, and you're not physically showing them that that's something that's driving you crazy. So staying cool using that coercion. Okay, so why shouldn't we just ignore it? So ignoring is a problem. It can be coercive. If they start doing something and we just, hightail it, turn around, walk away, that's pretty coercive. It's not building a relationship. It's a worsening for sure. It could be reinforcing what they're doing, or it could cause a behavior burst. Like, oh, you weren't noticing me before doing this thing? Watch me now. I'm going to escalate this for sure. So we're not going to ignore that. So we're going to pivot. It can increase those desirable behaviors. You're focusing on the positive. It's helping you focus on the positive and helping tell that person the behaviors that you liked and paying them off and hoping to see an increase in those. Again, hopefully it's weakening those undesirable behaviors. If it's something, a big thing, it may need a plan later on, but this is in the moment so you don't lose your cool. It's going to potentially prevent one of those behavior bursts where it escalates and gets you to notice them. And it could prevent it from junk behavior from escalating up into that serious category where it's harmful to themselves, to others. Okay. So that's why we don't ignore it. That's pivot, and how we use pivot and why we're not ignoring it. It doesn't feel good to be ignored. It's certainly not positive. Okay. We have more practice. Okay, our practice here, annoying Addie, picking your nose. That's a good one. Super annoying. I don't like seeing people doing it. Gets under my skin if I'm out in public, or if, it's your waiter or, something like that. So Addie's frequently picking her nose. She's telling you about this cool package she just got, and you're in the middle of typing an email. Let's talk about what are we gonna do? What are we waiting for? How do we know when it's time to give attention to Addie? What thing can Addie do that's going to cue us to come to pivot back and provide her those positive consequences. You can throw that in the chat whenever she stops picking her nose. Yeah, thanks, Beth Ann. Yeah, she takes that finger out. That's a time when that can cue us. All right, we can jump in now. It's time to give some positives. Done with your email? Yeah, that's an option within reasonable time. A few seconds there, wrap that up nice and neat and come back. But we're going to wait till Addie's behavior is really the one we're going to focus on. Taking that finger out is really what we're hoping to see that stop. So we're going to wait until Addie does that because it's junk behavior. It's not harmful to themselves or others unless it's up into that serious category. So this is just Addie's junk behavior, picking her nose, and it's driving you up a wall. So you're going to wait. You're going to maybe type that email. That's a good way to pivot on an activity. Pay attention to your email for a second. You look up, Addie's pulls her finger out of her nose, wait a few more seconds, and Addie, thanks for telling me about the cool package you just got. What's in your package? Simple as that. You come back to her after, when you see Addie's behavior start to go in the direction you want. Okay, and you really want to make a deal about it when you come back to her. So when she, shows that she, fingers out of her nose for a few seconds there, ideally 10, you come back to her, provide her those positive consequences. You want to make it a positive consequence. You don't want to just be like, oh, Addie, tell me about the package. You want to be like, Addie, that package looks so cool. Really amp it up. And again, without doing any of those, without paying attention or physically or talking about finger up their nose, like, oh, Addie, I'm so glad you got your finger out of your nose. Again, that's paying off that behavior and paying attention and giving that behavior those consequences. What we are going to focus on what things she can do. We're so glad she's telling you about this cool package she got. Let's practice again. We've got Outburst Ollie. So there's up at this table here, Ollie and Sally, working on a project. Ollie, I'm trying to combine those names. Ollie is muttering things like, this is stupid, I'm going to tear it up. And he's over there just, you can picture this scene of this guy just, it's dumb, doesn't want to do it. Sally's at the same table working and humming her favorite song. Okay, so what behavior are we going to pay attention to here? The junk behavior is clearly going to be Ollie here. This is stupid, I'm going to tear it up. So we're Sally working nicely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's the behavior that we're going to pivot to and, start talking about that pivot on a person or pivot on an activity. So, or another person. If we talk about the activity that's happening, I would go with Sally as the person. I'm going to pivot on another person to Sally. So those are some of our examples. I'll show you back on this other slide. So pivot to another person is our A here through our 2A. Actively attend to another person. Yeah, that's the one that I think I'm going to go for with this one. Our other scenario there with Addie, where we're writing an email, kind of set us up to pivoting on an activity. But this one is kind of setting us up here to pivot on another person. Okay, so we're going to pivot over to Sally, give her some interaction, talk with her about what's going on, the song she's humming, what she's doing, what she's working on. And what is Ollie going to do for his cue that we should pivot back to him? Because you always come back to that person and pay him that attention. What behavior are we waiting for Ollie? Oh, yeah. Okay, I see. You guys I'm just like staring at the chat box and not even seeing it. Sally working nicely. Pay attention to Sally. Yeah, we're seeing that. We're waiting for, we're going to wait for, so Ollie, once he stops like muttering, saying those negative things, we're not going to say it, but we're going to wait for that. Those are his cues. If he starts, maybe even he picks up his pen or pencil. That's a positive. That's a step in the right direction. Absolutely. Positive comments or the junk statements to end. Yes, exactly. So anything a step in the right direction is really when we want to make sure that those are the behaviors that we're wanting to see Ollie increase, that step in the right direction. All right. Okay. So we've gotten some practice with our pivoting on. We're really not paying off those negative behaviors. We're not drawing any attention. We recognize in our head that, you know, the picking the nose or the tearing up paper, that's junk behavior. It's getting on our nerves. We can pivot. We can not react to that in the moment. I'm not going to bring that up at all. I'm not going to draw attention to it because remember our, you know, behavior skills here. We want to pay attention and pay off those positives. So that's what we're going to come back to. Is any sort of positives that we can get a person. We are going to focus on that. Okay, what else can you do? Other tools. Here's another tool, our stay close hot. So that's when there is a negative, it is a hot scenario for that person. We're not going to react to that junk behavior. We're going to stay calm, concerned, moving towards that person, staying within arm's reach. So a lot of these you'll see are the same as our stay close for the other scenarios. But we added a couple more for when things are hot or negative for that person. So we're going to use those open-ended questions, our encouragement, our empathy. Those are our keys here. We're going to still use our tone of voice, our body language, move closely, touch as appropriate. And we might have to repeat the OEE, our open-ended empathy, encouragement, repeat and repeat and repeat until that person is calm, not having that hot moment anymore. They're not, you know, yelling, they're not crying, they're not frustrated, they're, you know, decreased, their behavior is cooled quite a bit, and direct to an alternative behavior or calming situation. Or assistance with problem solving. But again, we're going to wait and wait and wait. We're not going to problem solve in that moment when things are hot and they're frustrated and emotions and tensions are running high. And we're going to use those that reinforcement, those positive consequences. Okay, so again, those OEE, if we just still remember those open-ended empathy and encouragement, that's just the heart, the meat and potatoes of any sort of building our relationship, whether they're in a cool and exciting moment or, you know, what we call a hot moment. Okay, again, bringing this up, our empathy, taking the perspective of that person, identifying that they are having those emotions and it's valid, validating those emotions, how powerful that is. Like if they are so mad, it's, you know, something that you see as silly, it's not a big deal, but they are so mad, so frustrated, recognizing that they're frustrated and that is a bummer or sad or anything to them, that's our empathy. Okay, so our last little round of practice, and we will wrap up here. Sam's sad call. Sam just had an argument with her roommate, and she's just like frequently, she's laying in bed for hours, crying when she gets upset. It just wrecks her. They got in a fight with the roommate, and she's just in bed, just crying. That's not good for her. She texts you about this fight and says, I'm so over this. I'm not going to take their crap anymore. What kind of empathy statement can we use here? Let's practice empathy here. And go ahead and you can put that in the chat box. Examples, feel free to jump in. Yeah, I can tell that you're very hurt. You're valid for being upset. Yeah, you sound really frustrated. Other things I can think of in that scenario, if it's a roommate who just had an argument, you know, pissed off, annoyed, over it, upset, frustrated. Yeah, you guys are really recognizing that this is just, Sam's had an argument and it is frustrating for Sam. Okay. Empathy. Empathy is hard. Now we're going to move to encouragement. What kind of encouragement? What things are they doing that are going to pay off for them in the future? Oh, yeah, recognizing that roommates can be difficult. Difficult, a good word for that scenario that Sam is in. Encouragement. What things are they doing that are, going to be paying off for them in the future? It's, again, harder than it was back up there with our positives. When Alex got his GED, we can really easily think about the things that he's doing paying off for him in the future. But what things now are going to pay off for them in the future? Yeah, you're able to recognize your feelings. You're able to recognize and talk about those feelings. Absolutely. It shows a lot that you're talking about it and opening up as opposed to just laying and crying for hours, maybe. Really giving that encouragement of like, they're talking to you about this. Separating yourself from the situation. Yeah, absolutely. Giving that person the positives of, emotions are valid and their ability to recognize what they need to do for themselves in the future for their relationship with this roommate. It's perfect. So there are things that we'd like to see in the future that are good for Sam in this scenario. Sometimes you got to pick apart. You got to dig deep for what we can use for these encouragement statements. But there's something in every scenario that we can work on those positives for. Single Steve. Steve is sitting in a chair, head in his hands. And when you use your open-ended question, you see that, you look down, Steve, what's up? And even that's a little bit of our empathy, wouldn't you say? You look down, you look, upset, and you say, you look down, Steve, what's up? You learn, you used your open-ended question, got Steve talking, got more information. You learned he just got dumped after a 2-year relationship. Oof. Yeah, that is hard. Empathy we can give here. I think we all can give some empathy to Steve, who's clearly feeling down. What empathy, what emotion? You see, you look, you must feel. Yeah, you must be disappointed. You have a lot of emotions you're feeling. Yeah, absolutely. If you aren't quite sure which way they're feeling, if they're feeling devastated, if they're feeling pissed off, something like that, it could run a full range of emotions here for someone who just got dumped after 2 years, bummed out. But just, yeah, like I was saying, you could even have just identifying you, like you've got a lot of emotions, you've got a lot of feelings you're working through right now. Breakups can be really hard. Yeah, this is not easy. It's hard. You're recognizing that they're going through a difficult thing. Mixed emotions. Yeah, you guys are nailing these empathies. It can really hurt. Yeah. So then what kind of encouragement? Again, we're going to dig deep. What kind of encouragement can we give? What is Steve doing that's helpful in this tough situation? What encouragement can we provide him about how he's handling this difficult situation? Might take a little bit of our, imagining the scenario. Maybe you've been there with a friend who's been in this scenario. What encouragement? What do we want to, those positives, what can we focus on for that person? Great job talking about this. You're the strength in talking about it. Yeah, you're really strong in talking about your emotions. Man, talking about emotions is not easy. It's not. And talking about that vulnerability of getting dumped, that's a vulnerable moment. And really, if they're opening up to you about that, absolutely. Thank you for sharing this with me. I'm here to talk with you in the future too, letting them know. So even like if he's sitting there and he's taking deep breaths, trying to calm down, or Steve's going for a walk and trying to release some of that, frustration and take, what can we, what positives can we give? And then once Steve is a little bit lower, that's when we use our other skills here, our stay close hat skills of, so we're going to repeat and repeat and repeat. So if you say something, you take a misstep and he amps back up and is crying, or he just, that hits him again. Repeat, repeat, repeat until Steve is ready for alternative or calming or ready to solve a problem, but not until Steve is way down here and ready for problem solving. In the moment is not the time for problem solving. But once they're calm and cool, and you've gone through that OEE, and they give you signs they're good to keep going, that's when you give those something that you would like to enjoy. Thank you guys so much for your participation. Amazing. Thank you for joining. I really hope you guys got some things out of that. That wraps up what we're doing today. I have some, links here, some QR codes you can scan on our 10 Common Coercive podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about that, our director of positive behavior supports, our behavior analyst for the state of Missouri, worked on recording these coercive podcasts. Really interesting. I love listening to it. I've listened to it several times. Really good listen. And a good refresher, because we do coercives all the time, and sometimes we just need a reminder. My tools of choice. Attend a tools of choice class. So this was like tools, brief, cut it, keep it going, keep it moving, getting you the baseline here. But our tools of choice class is 4 sessions over a month long. We really give you a chance to practice and dig deep in these skills and a couple other skills that we have. So there is an option to attend our tools of choice or our family coaching workshops. If, we've got 1 hour in the evenings, and we have a way for, we kind of teach these skills, but specifically for how you can relate it, to a family, to your family. Just 1 hour in the evening, short little workshop. They're a lot of fun. Those are kind of our top 3 scans. Back to the tools of choice course. Yes, absolutely. So here's our tools of choice one. We've got some more options. Thank you guys so much for coming. It was wonderful, your participation. I'm so glad you guys were here and could get this information, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye. If you have any questions, also, if you're still here, if you have questions, feel free to email or reach out to us.